When I sat down to make this video, I came in with the assumption that I would be echoing the sentiment of the community as a whole, which was that Warlock and Titans primarily in the Solar 3.0 system got shafted. But the more I've dug into the system, and as I've tried to recreate the old Solar 2.0 system in the Solar 3.0 version, I've realized that that is just strictly wrong. This discussion started with me asking the community about 2 days, maybe after Solar 3.0 came out, asking the people what they thought of the changes, who ended up coming out with the biggest buffs, the most impactful changes, and overwhelmingly, hunters took the cake. And this is just poetic. I thought that this would be the summation of the video, that I would sit down and say that Warlocks and Titans are, just as the comment section described, page after page of being described as getting shafted. I just couldn't make it up. 69% voted for Hunter, 6.9 thousand votes. The comedy writes itself, and I see a lot of other sentiment online, particularly this tweet, which I agreed with. I thought that, hey, it kind of sucks that Warlock lost a lot of its stuff. But I've sat down and I've realized what Bungie was doing, that the changes that came to Solar 3.0 weren't necessarily nerfs, rather it's more like they were corrections. Making things that make a large portion of population, especially capital G gamers, happy is even more difficult, because typically when players see something, they latch onto the stuff that they notice to be wrong, the things that go awry. It's sort of like if you were to sit down at a party with somebody who had a massive mole on their cheek, that would probably be the number one thing you remember. Probably not what they did for a living, or maybe not even necessarily what their name was. You just probably would call them the guy with the huge mole on his face. Take a look at the old Solar subclass system. This is from an outdated wiki website that only had the Solar 2.0 changes and hasn't switched over to Solar 3.0. And if I were to sit you down and compare these two side by side using the old Solar 2.0 system, green for buffs, yellow for changes or nerfs, and red for just outright removals, you would look at this and say, wow, that's a lot of red and yellow. That's not good. That's not fun. Where's all my green? I was hoping the 3.0 system would buff some of this stuff. And in fact, it looks like the stuff that ended up getting buffed was stuff that was already good. And we can show it for each of these subclasses. We can go through Hunter, comparing the old one, comparing the new one. We can compare the Titans, old one, new one. We can even just do a broad overview to see side by side how much red and yellow they are from a top-down perspective. And when I'm looking at it through this lens, I'm seeing what people are feeling. I'm seeing that people are looking at their subclass and saying that thing that I really liked or that thing that I've grown accustomed to has been ripped away from me, or it's been nerfed to the point where it's not that viable or as viable as it used to be. But now let's take a look at what this looks like in the new Solar 3.0 system. If I were to try to recreate as close as I possibly can the old system we had in the Solar 3.0, guess what? There is a lot of space. There's a lot of places where you can still slot even more items. You can go even further beyond. And that's not even counting some of the buffs that came to some of these. Of course, there are some nerfs with some of these systems. Primarily, I think that the Warlock Phoenix Dive was unnecessarily nerfed. There's just no excuse for that. The Warlock Phoenix Dive is awful. I've talked about this before, but it's not worth the class ability slot. Its healing is too low, and it also takes up the ability to use a rift. Really not worth it. Or you could take a look at Sunbreakers and say that Sunbreakers lost their ability to get their damage boosted from a sunspot, and they also don't get their abilities back as quickly, or Roaring Flames doesn't do as much damage. And yeah, you're right, there are some stuff where it's just kind of a nerf. But when you look at the grand scheme of everything, like look as we're going through all of these systems, you're seeing how much is actually open and available to us. The power of choice is a very powerful tool. The ability to build into a specific playstyle or find unique engagements or unique mixes of items that create a more powerful build opens up not just more exploration into the game, but also allows us to make a more specifically focused and more specifically lethal build. But of course, Bungie has to balance all this out. So yes, there was a handful of nerfs that came to the system. But the way that these nerfs came and the way that these removals came was for a reason that you might not intuit right away. That's not something that you would think of right away. let's talk about healing grenades. Healing grenades are now available on all of the solar subclasses. It's just an item you can equip. Warlocks no longer have the thing where you can convert a grenade, charge it, and then throw it down, which at face value should be fine. Having the ability to get a healing grenade is pretty cool. That's a pretty neat little feature, and the healing grenades were really strong. But what really got removed from the healing grenade? Well, they don't heal all the way up to full health anymore, and they don't provide an overshield, and you get a better restoration on top of it. We can chalk up the ability of it not giving you absolutely full health right off the rip as sort of a change rather than a nerf, because that healing, it has its trade-offs. It has its ups, it has its downs. But the overshield removal, just like with the Well of Radiance, feels a bit odd. Didn't it feel like those abilities were balanced? Didn't it feel like it made sense for those things to exist there and really rounded out the kit? Well, I would like to submit to you that I think the reason why, specifically, we'll talk about some more abilities here in just a second, that ability was removed. The specific overshield from the healing grenades and the Warlock's Well of Radiance was removed, is that that's a void thing. And now you might say, okay, maybe you're just nitpicky, but isn't that a little bit odd? Void is specifically built around overshields. It's one of its core features. It's one of its core verbs. It's one of its primary words. It's key words that it's used in its system, and that is explicitly the primary thing that was removed. And in fact, Bungie went in and tried to, round it out a little bit to make it feel like it was okay. They gave Well of Radiance more damage resistance while you're inside of it, and they gave the healing grenade a passive healing that would continue to heal you even if you took damage, or even if you were already at full health and then took damage after the fact. Perhaps it's just a coincidence, you say. Let's talk about another ability that had one of its things removed. Top Tree Sunbreaker's Shoulder Charge. It used to allow you to apply a weaken to a target. Again, what is the Void 3.0 system built around but a weaken effect as one of its key words? It's clear to me that Bungie is trying to separate out all of these classes. They're trying to better define what makes each of these things rather than having like a specific playstyle of a specific tree. They're trying to say, if you like solar, this is what you're going for. You're going for healing, you're going for burning, you're going for a slight increase in damage. That's what you're going for. If you're going for void, you're going for overshields, you're going for devour, you're going for invisibility, you're going for weaken. I'd be willing to bet that's why we also lost the Sunbreaker's top tree ability that gave you a bonus to speed whenever you got solar ability kills. I can guarantee you that that is meant to be a Arc 3.0 change. I'll put money on it. But what about some of the other stuff? What about like Roaring Flames not allowing me in Crucible to one-shot somebody with a throwing hammer? Well, on that side of things, I think Bungie's just trying to remove one-shot abilities from the game. They've made that pretty clear that they're explicitly trying to remove those from your hands unless you are specifically building around it. Think like Peregrine Greaves and Shoulder Charge. So that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Also, ability spam was something they're trying to pull back. Cooldowns in general are a lot longer, so Roaring Flames, Sunspots, not giving you that much ability energy back, again, plays right in. Bungie has been very clear. Everything should make sense. Everything that we are seeing should not surprise us, but it is human nature to latch onto the things that catch us off, the things that we aren't expecting, the things that we were hoping to hold on to, are the things that we lost, the negative stuff. That's what we hold on to, and I don't blame anybody for that. But it makes a lot more sense when you sit down and look at it, doesn't it? Share this around with a friend who's considering writing off Solar 3.0 as explicitly trash, and maybe this might change their mind. That's my soapbox. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. Bless your faces, and deuces.